Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is Friday, TowerGate Day 261, November the 24th, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, hopefully everybody had a good, peaceful Thanksgiving and you got plenty to eat, did a little partying, got to sleep in. Hopefully all them things are true. Hopefully most of you got the day off today. We did get, actually we got Thursday off. Friday was optional. We actually did have some people sign up on the sign-up sheet to come in and work on Friday. Not me. No way. But we did have some people actually sign up to go to work today, so I wonder how many of them actually showed up. We'll find out on Monday. Anyway, a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get to it. Okay, back on November the 6th, I did a video where I talked about the fact that Senator Magoo had just been fitted for a boot on his left leg because of a torn Achilles. So here's the story coming to us from the Daily Caller. Senator Magoo has now, well, this is my take on it. Senator Magoo has now gone insane for real, or something else. On November the 6th, Senator Magoo received treatment at Walter Reed Medical Center after injuring his right Achilles tendon. As a result, Magoo was given a medical boot that goes all the way up to the knee. Many of you have seen the pic of John Magoo with his boot, which goes all the way up to his knee. Now, 2 weeks later, which this just happened a couple days ago, which was 2 weeks later, Magoo is photographed with his wife sitting on a bench. She's all smiles, and we look at the boot, and it's on Senator Magoo's right leg, or his left leg this time. Now, we can only assume that he's senile. And we have to assume at this point that his wife is also senile, because at some point she should have looked over and said, "Honey, you've got your boot on the wrong leg. It's your right leg that you have the torn Achilles, not your left leg. So put your boot back onto your right leg." Nope, apparently neither of them caught it. So Magoo was asked about this, and his response was, "Well, since I had the boot on my right leg, my left leg was doing all the extra work. So to compensate, I decided to put the boot on my left leg for a while." That's the craziest thing I've ever heard. First of all, I know a little bit about these types of injuries, Achilles tears. If you go to a doctor and you have an Achilles tear and it's bad enough that it needs the boot, that boot is to be worn for a minimum of 4 weeks, usually 6 weeks. And then you have it examined and they may sometimes have you wear it a little longer. It's only been 2 weeks. And he's already moved the boot for some reason from his right leg, where the injury to his Achilles actually occurred, over to his left leg. That makes no sense whatsoever. Makes no sense whatsoever. Also, on an Achilles tear, for any of you that follow like football or anything like that, you know that when a player gets an Achilles, he's out for typically, at least 4 to 5 months. Usually 6 months is what doctors will say. You get the boot. If you had a bad Achilles tear, you get the boot for 4 to 6 weeks, and then once the boot's taken off, you still have to be pretty ginger with yourself for a period of up to 5 to 6 months before that Achilles tear fully repairs itself well enough that you could say go out and play professional sports or put a lot of weight on it or anything like that. There is no way that Senator Magoo's doctor told him after 2 weeks to take the boot off. And there's no circumstance I can imagine where the doctor would say, "Oh yes, Senator Magoo, after 2 weeks you can go ahead and take the boot off and go ahead and move the boot over to your other leg to compensate for the weakness in your leg." I mean, that's just insanity. No, there's something going on here with Senator Magoo and his wife Cindy. She's smiling awful big in the pic, but seeing as how he's mostly senile and she should know this, she's married to him, she should be making sure his boot goes on the proper leg. So what he's up to, whether or not he ever had an Achilles injury in the first place, whether or not this is some sort of a fake job he's doing, or whether the man is senile and he can't remember which leg he injured, I don't know. But his excuse about moving it over to the other leg, especially after only 2 weeks, he should still have at least 2 weeks, probably another 4 weeks of having that boot on. The Achilles does not repair itself in 2 weeks. That's just insanity. So anyway, what do you all think? What's Senator Magoo doing? Is he nuts? He must be. But that is exactly what we are learning, and it's got a few people kind of puzzled and scratching their heads as to what Magoo is doing. Who knows? Alrighty, next up, Mike Flynn. Being reported by the Gateway Pundit, Mike Flynn likely working with the Mueller investigation. Okay, so a lot of people are kind of freaking out when they read this headline. This doesn't surprise me at all. But what this does not indicate is that Flynn is working with Mueller to somehow give Mueller something on Trump. The issue with Mike Flynn is really two issues. Number one, he was working as kind of a lobbyist, I guess you would say, for Turkey, which means he should have filled out a registration form that he was operating as a foreign agent for the government of Turkey. Now keep in mind, Turkey is an ally. We have some difficult things going on between ourselves and Turkey right now, but still they're considered an ally. They're part of NATO. But that's the primary thing that he's being looked at. But also because there's a lot of other things going on. I'm not going to get too deep into it because it would take an entire video to do. But there is a man from Turkey who's a political guy who Erdogan believes was part of this so-called attempted coup that went down. I guess it's been almost a year and a half now. And so this individual, Erdogan believes, was part of this attempted coup about a year and a half ago. Well, he is in the United States and has been. Erdogan wants the U.S. government to return this man back to Turkey so he can be tried for high crimes. But the U.S. government is not cooperating with this Turkey on getting this Turkish man back to Turkey so that he can be held accountable for whatever the Turkish government or Erdogan believes he's guilty of. So they're kind of protecting this man. Now, it is believed, as part of this, where this investigation goes, is that Flynn may have been working for the Turkish government and trying to do something to get this man back to Turkey. Whether that was to lobby government officials to try to persuade them to send this man back to Turkey, which they're not going to do. He's an American intelligence asset. They are not going to return him to Turkey, and Mike Flynn would not have the push or pull or anything else to be able to make that happen. That's not something I think is even realistic, and I wouldn't think the Erdogan government would think that at all. Mike Flynn does not have that kind of power. So what else may be going on here? Well, I think it is being suspected by the intelligence community, and obviously this is what they're telling Mueller, is that they believe that maybe Flynn was involved in trying to do something to take this man down here in the United States, maybe drug him or beat him up till he's unconscious, put him in a crate and ship him to Turkey, who knows. But it's believed that maybe Mike Flynn was working with the Turkish government to try to do something to get this man back to Turkey where he could be stand for his charges that are against him for high crimes against Erdogan, the Turkish government, or whatever. So this issue largely has to do with Mike Flynn personally and his lobbying efforts, acting as a foreign agent on behalf of Turkey without filling out the proper paperwork. It also may have something more to do with the fact that maybe Mike Flynn was involved with some other people who were trying to do something, maybe kidnap the guy or whatever, but to apprehend this guy and get him over to Turkey, which I think would be very difficult. He's got government security around him because, of course, the CIA and the government in general knows that Turkey's probably got their own agents on the ground over here. They know where he is. Maybe they might want to try to assassinate him or kill him or what have you. Maybe they want to try to knock him out and put him in a crate and send him back to Turkey. Who knows? But this is what this is all about. This doesn't have anything really to do with Trump or Russian meddling or anything else. This is an issue about Mike Flynn and his association and his collaboration with the government of Turkey. That is what this is about. And so the fact that Mike Flynn is cutting a deal wouldn't surprise me at all. Because if he is found to, if there's evidence that he was part of this, yeah, he could be looking at some jail time, certainly some fines, certainly his career is over. Anything having to do with government or once you're exposed in a deal like this, you no longer have any real ability to operate as a foreign lobbyist anymore either, because your reputation's kind of soiled. People believe that if they even associate with you, that they're probably going to come under the guise of the intelligence agencies that are watching. So you're damaged goods. So Mike Flynn, obviously looking at a lot of legal bills, looking at potentially big fines, maybe jail time. Yeah, I can certainly understand that what the CIA or what the Mueller investigation, what the government would want to know from Michael Flynn is who were you working with in the government of Turkey on behalf of Erdogan. What sources, what resources would you have been working with to try to do whatever it is that you were going to do? So what they want from him is information to help them find out who the guys are over in Turkey, which side they're on, because there's a lot of confusion right now with what's going on in Turkey. They know pretty much where Erdogan stands, but there's a lot of other people around Erdogan who were American intelligence assets. And I think they want to know who's been compromised, who's playing them, who's for real, or whatever. So obviously they want the backstory, they want information. And that's probably what Mike Flynn is being asked to trade, to give information that the government wants in exchange for maybe him avoiding any jail time. He'll probably still end up with some fines or something. But obviously Mike Flynn is probably going to cut a deal with the government to try to limit his liability in this thing, but it will have really nothing to do with Russia or Trump collusion or anything like that. This is an issue about Mike Flynn and Turkey. So don't get freaked out if you read the story. This is not something to be freaked out about, really. Okay, next story. The anti-Trump Saudi Prince Alaweed, who we've been talking about, is being reported by Saudi sources that Alaweed was hung upside down and beaten by his interrogators in Saudi Arabia. They want information as well. And Prince Alaweed, of course, is not the only one. It appears that there are many, dozens of these Saudi princes who are being hung upside down and beaten with a stick or something, and being tortured and various types of torture to get information from them. Of course, we know that Alaweed donated $25 million to the Hillary for President campaign. We know he's donated millions to the Clinton Foundation and also to the Clinton Global Initiative. Now that's very important. Clinton Global Initiative, not something that's been talked about in the last couple of weeks. Everybody's focusing on the Clinton Foundation. But we are going to learn, remember that word, the Clinton Global Initiative, because we are going to learn as we get deeper into the Uranium One scandal and deeper into a lot of these things, that we're going to find that there was not only money moved in the Uranium One deal through the Clinton Foundation, $145 million, we're going to find out that there was also money moved and laundered through the Clinton Global Initiative by these same characters. This hasn't really come up yet, but I'm pretty sure it is going to come up. John Solomon has referenced this fact that there's also documents that show that there was money laundered through the Clinton Global Initiative as well. So 145 million is not the final number. There was probably millions more laundered through the Clinton Global Initiative, and we're going to be hearing more about that. So don't be surprised in the next week or two when you hear that the Uranium One scandal was expanded to another Clinton-type charitable organization, a fraudulent organization, and that this thing expands even bigger. And this is it's believed that Frank Gustra, was also laundering money through the CGI, the Clinton Global Initiative. So that'll be coming up. You'll be getting more on that. But we know that this Prince Alaweed was also moving money there as well. And we have to remember that it was Prince Alaweed who got into the Twitter war with Donald Trump during the general election back in 2016. He had tweeted out basically to Donald Trump that he should drop out of the race and that the GOP would never nominate him. And Trump fired back a tweet at Alaweed and said, yeah, well, let me tell you what. When I become president, your daddy's money isn't going to buy you influence in Washington anymore. So this is a personal enemy of the President Trump, and obviously very much a personal enemy of Prince Alaweed, or I mean of the current prince who's running the show, Prince Salman, Mohammed bin Salman. He's pretty much running the show there, and obviously he's no fan. And again, we learned last week that it wasn't just about just corruption and things like that, but Prince Alaweed suggesting that these guys are the hardliners. They don't want reforms. They hang out a lot with the globalists in Europe. They want to sell Saudi Arabia out to the globalists, and so very much Prince bin Salman is very much opposed to the globalist world order, and he's a real reformer. At least ways that's the signal he's sending. And so far, we can believe that that's true based on the things that he's saying and doing, because he just recently was interviewed and he's said that he wants a moderate, open Islam. And so he has been relaxing the ultra-conservative rules. We know he recently lifted the ban on women being able to drive in Saudi Arabia. And as I said, we got to watch bin Salman. I mean, I'm happy with a lot of the things he's doing. I'm certainly on board with it. But he does worry me that he might try to make a move of sending ground forces into Lebanon. I expect if there's another big uprising in Bahrain, that he will send in troops to support the Bahrain government, because he's already done that 2 times, and they have a very difficult situation. And keep in mind, our 7th Fleet is in Bahrain, so he would have the full support of the American government to assist Bahrain to put down any uprisings, of which there have been 3 in the last 4 years. But we still need to keep a close eye on him, and I'm sure the Trump administration is doing that. It's we don't know how far he wants to go with these reforms, but we know that he's very westernized, and would definitely wants to relax a lot of the ultra-conservative things. Women should be able to work and this type of thing. Probably won't get rid of the hijabs and stuff like that, but he's definitely, compared to the extreme ultra-conservative right wing that's been running Saudi Arabia for the past since the 1960s. And the supporters of the extreme Wahhabism, which is the radical religion that most of the Islamic radicals follow, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all those people. He wants a more moderate form of Islam. So, there's a lot to be watched here as we move forward. And when I think about that, I'm trying to picture Saudi Arabia, going to all these reforms, and pretty soon you'll have women walking around in high heels and mini skirts, listening to American rock and roll radio, right? It reminds me of the 1970s in Iran. When the Shah was in power, when the U.S. propped the Shah up in Iran and put him back in power in the late 60s and early 70s, he really began this massive push to import Western values into Iran. So in the late 60s, early 70s, you could go to Iran and you would see women walking around in really, really short micro mini skirts and high heels, and of course they were listening to American rock and roll music and doing all sorts of other things that were really just very repulsive to the religious hardliners in Iran. And it was really this massive move to really very quickly drop all these hardcore Western values in the country of Iran, which is really what prompted and sped up and facilitated the Iranian Revolution. The hardliners just finally got sick of seeing this type of stuff. They didn't like seeing those women wearing those short skirts and listening to rock and roll music and stuff like that. And so that's what really got the hardliners all riled up, and what led to the Iranian Revolution. Of course, they took our hostages at the embassy. Then the Ayatollah, popped up again and came back into Iran. And the Shah was, of course, left the country. Most of the people around him left the country, and of course that was the Iranian Revolution in '79, and that's when they went back to being a full hardcore Islamic republic with the hardcore, ultra-conservative views that exist in Iran today. And even though Rafsanjani was a mild reformer, nothing like what the Shah was doing in Iran. And so, yeah, I'm not suggesting that Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia is going to go full Shah of Iran type Western values. And I'm jokingly saying that you'll see women walking around Saudi Arabia in miniskirts. They don't even do that in the States anymore, but not really. Unless you go like to dance clubs and stuff like that, it's the miniskirt's pretty much out of vogue, I guess you would say. Unfortunately, I kind of like the miniskirts. I remember the 70s. It was cool. But anyway, that's just another thing. Probably show my male chauvinism there. hey, you know, guys like looking at pretty girls in miniskirts. What can I say? What can I say? As long as it's not your wife or girlfriend, it's all right, right? So anyway, that's what's going on with that. Let's see what's up next. Oh, here's a real jewel. The recent release of another 148,000 pages of Kennedy files. We learn another thing. Well, it's not something we learn. We just confirm another thing that we already knew. But this is really a rare document that no one's ever seen before. This is really a very interesting document. And this document that was recently released is a document created by the FBI. And it is a document that's describing a phone call that was made by Jack Ruby on the morning of the assassination to an FBI informant. And on the morning of the assassination, Jack Ruby contacted a friend of his who was an FBI informant, and he asked him if he wanted to meet. And here's his exact quote: "Meet on the lawn to watch the fireworks at Dealey Plaza." So here you have Jack Ruby emailing this FBI informant saying, hey, you want to hook up over at Dealey Plaza here in a little while and watch the fireworks out on the lawn? And of course, then we have several different very clear photos which show Jack Ruby standing next to a man, which we can now probably identify as this FBI informant, standing in front of the Postal Annex building, which is right across the street from the school book depository. So there we have it. If we ever doubted, or if anyone ever doubted, I never did, that Jack Ruby was much more involved in this plot and knew what was going down, here you go. There is the document that shows that the FBI was aware of this phone call that Jack Ruby made on the morning of the assassination to an FBI informant talking about going over to Dealey Plaza to watch the fireworks on the lawn. And I'm pretty sure he wasn't expecting fireworks at noontime in Dealey Plaza on a relatively, what had become a sunny day. It was a raining morning, but the sun broke out around 11 o'clock, 10:30, 11 o'clock, and it turned out to be a nice, pretty sunny day there in Dallas. And even if there were rain, there would have been fireworks probably in the rain and daylight, you know. So we know that he's not talking about regular fireworks. We know he's talking about something else. There you go. Drip, drip, drip. Las Vegas shooting. There are a lot of journalists who have filed legal papers to try to get information about what is going on with the investigation with the FBI and the Las Vegas PD. And of course, they're running into a lot of brick walls, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that they haven't finished the investigation. But there has been a reporter who has gotten a hold of a preliminary report by the FBI on their ballistics report about how many rounds and what time period those rounds were fired. So we're learning from this story that the FBI's preliminary ballistics report is saying that there were 1,100 rounds fired by Paddock in 9 minutes. 1,100 rounds in 9 minutes. Now, if you were looking at the entire 9 minutes and that being continuous fire throughout, that would be 2 rounds per second, which would not include the pauses, of which we know there were many, and at least 2 of over 20 seconds. But even with a bump stock, it is nearly impossible to imagine that someone could pull off this type of job right here alone. Very, very difficult to believe one person could fire for 9 consecutive minutes. And of course we know that that did not happen because we have the audio and we've all listened to the audio. I should say at this point that, again, like the case of the dossier, it will likely be the civil lawsuit that's being filed and will be filed, multiple civil lawsuits against MGM that will probably give us the most information about these types of things, which will be coming. Now, I imagine the reason that the attorneys haven't actually filed in court the lawsuits, they're putting it all together now, getting all their sources together and all that, is because the investigation is not complete. It's kind of hard to go through with your lawsuit until you actually have the results of the investigation, because that's going to be a lot of your case. Without the results of the investigation, it's hard for these attorneys to go forward with their cases. So I imagine these attorneys are getting all their clients together. Maybe they're class action suits, maybe there's some class action, maybe there's many individual suits. But really, until the investigation is complete and the final report comes out, it's the attorneys are not able to really do very much. So I think that's probably what they're waiting for. But if this thing should drag out too long, then they may go ahead and file it, anyway, and try to force the government to have to come out in the deposition and in the discovery process, which you'll have in a civil hearing, to force this information out by the FBI. So this could go one of two ways. But again, what I've said from the very beginning, and I have to assume that this has been done, is that what they need to do, because they have plenty of audio that will give them the entire timeline of firing, which was 9 minutes. They need to be able to splice together the various pieces of tape they need to get the entire 9 minutes of audio. Then they need to sit down with a stopwatch, and they need to start the watch every time firing starts and then stop it when the firing stops. They need to get a total elapsed time during the 9 minutes of how many actual minutes of shooting there was. And I think when you get that number, it's going to prove that there's no way a single shooter could have fired all those rounds. But we also have, if you just analyze, I think, this is the sound of the audio clips, I think it's clear to me that there are cases where you can hear what sounds like overlapping fire. There are cases where it sounds like you have fire coming from two different locations based on it's very loud and not so loud. And of course the bark of the automatic weapons gives of the weapons being used gives the indication that there's two different barks, that there will be two different weapons, maybe three, firing. So there's much to be learned, but until the final report comes out, we don't know. But just this preliminary report telling us about the 1,100 rounds in 9 minutes, there's a real problem with that, and it'll be interesting to see how they explain that away. Eventually, these attorneys, if not the government itself, the attorneys will certainly sit down and get the elapsed time of exactly how many seconds there were of actual fire. Not how many minutes took place during the firing, but how many actual minutes of shot bursts there were. And that's going to give you the number of how many rounds had to be fired per second. And I think that's going to clearly show that there's no way one shooter could have done this. Well, the swamp monsters are feeling the heat. John Conyers now has another accuser, but more importantly, his attorney, believe it or not, his attorney came out yesterday, day before Thanksgiving, I should say, and said that, quote, there are allegations against many members of the House and Senate, unquote. I can't believe he said that. First of all, John Conyers, you better fire that guy. Whoever that lawyer is, he's not very good. I can't believe he came out and said that. Because essentially what he just said is that they're talking about these allegations against Conyers, and Conyers' lawyers comes out and says, basically, yeah, well, there's allegations against many members of Congress and the Senate. Oh, really? Of the House and Senate. Really? And who would they be, by the way? So what he's done is he's come out and basically said, oh, yeah, there's all kinds of allegations. The only logical follow-up question to that is, oh, yeah, and who are they? Who are those allegations against? So I'm pretty sure that many members of Congress are not very happy with John Conyers right now, and they certainly are not happy with that lawyer. I don't know why he would say a thing like that. That is just crazy. I mean, it's not a very smart statement. He needs a much better lawyer, although he's now opened up the Pandora's box because he's basically said, oh, there's many allegations against members of Congress in both houses. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, we have former Obama administration Health and Human Service Director Kathleen Sebelius, who's also a longtime Clinton friend and ally. She roasted the rotten Reverend Clinton in an interview with another Clinton confidant, David Axelrod. Now, Kathleen Sebelius took rotten Reverend Clinton to task for the attacks on Bill Clinton's accusers. Everything from sexual harassment to rape. So there are two more buzzards now circling the rotten Reverend Clinton and her pervert husband, William Jefferson Blythe Clinton. And those two buzzards' names are Kathleen Sebelius and David Axelrod. Axelrod was very involved in the Clintons' Bill Clinton's 2 terms as president. He was a close confidant. I think he held an official position within the Clinton administration, certainly in one of those 2 terms. I can't remember exactly, but he was definitely out there as a front man for the Bill Clinton presidency back in the 90s. And of course, Kathleen Sebelius was of course Obama's Health and Human Services director, who gave us all those lies on Obamacare. But the thing is, just like her and Kristen Gillibrand, up until recently, the last couple of days or weeks, they have been staunch defenders of the Clintons, especially Hillary Clinton. Sebelius and Axelrod knew all about the fact that the rotten Reverend Clinton was put in charge of destroying these women that were accusing her husband back in the day. Now all of a sudden, they got hit with a truth stick. I'm not buying it. They need to throw someone under the bus, and the buzzards are hungry. Throw the Clintons under the bus, let them be roadkill, and then feed on their dying carcasses. That is the plan. That is the plan, and the Clintons, certainly Bill Clinton, knows it. The rotten Reverend, I think she's too senile to realize it. She's so drunk on power, she can't imagine not having any. She's about to find out. Well, there are at least 3 journalists and a Russian expert who were paid by Fusion GPS. We know that, and we just talked about this from the bank records of Fusion GPS. So now the question is, what are their names? Who are they? Now, you can guess that there was many more people, not just these 3 journalists and the Russian expert who were paid by Fusion GPS. You can assume that probably Glenn Simpson was walking around with envelopes stuffed with cash, giving them to many journalists. But these are probably just 3 that were paid through through GPS with checks, which is a stupid thing to do. But they did a lot of stupid things at Fusion GPS. Now we have this Bill Browder, of course, who came out and made the statement when he was testifying in front of Congress. Of course, Fusion GPS was going after him regarding the Magnitsky Act. And Browder says that Fusion GPS creates fake stories, slander material. Then they pay journalists to spread the fake smears. That's basically what they are. They're dirty trick specialists. Now, Nunes is going to get the names of these journalists. He is going to get that one way or another. That, just like everything else, is going to come out. But what he really wants to get to the bottom of, and the question that the FBI and the Justice Department are fighting tooth and nail to try to keep Nunes and Grassley over in the Senate Judiciary Committee, what they're trying to keep from having to answer, the question they don't want to answer. Of all the questions that are being asked, there's 2 they really don't want to answer. One is whether or not they paid Christopher Steele any money, the FBI, and they also want to hide whether or not the FBI and the Justice Department used the dossier as a reason to get the FISA warrants. This is the biggie. This is the biggie. Trey Gowdy is really harping on this one. Devin Nunes is going to get to the bottom of this one way or another. Charles Grassley is going to get to the bottom of this one way or another. This is a key question. And if it turns out to be true, and just about everyone believes that it is true, and we find that the FISA warrant was granted or requested based on the dossier, that is big trouble. This is major. This alone. Keep in mind, what we have going on here are scandals within scandals. And this scandal really doesn't touch the rotten Reverend Clinton. The rotten Reverend Clinton, the scandals that touch her is, of course, the mishandling of classified information, which is still being looked at. It's been reopened. And, of course, her dealings in the Uranium One deal and the pay for play in the Clinton Foundation. This deal here with the dossier and the FISA warrants has more to do with the FBI, Comey, the Justice Department, and the Obama administration. So we have multiple scandals, and there are scandals within scandals. But these are the ones that we're really watching, and they are going to get to the bottom of these questions. And it may take some time, but believe me, they can't hide this stuff forever or keep it under wraps forever. We are going to learn the answer to that, And if we get the answer, and we believe it will be, that the FBI and the Justice Department used the dossier to get the FISA warrants, that is when all hell is going to break loose. And that will send people to jail, period. Finally, my prediction, Al Franken will not last until the November 2018 election. He will not last. He's saying he's staying in, he's not going to resign, but I can tell you there's going to be a lot of pressure from ranking Democrats that don't want to lose that seat in Minnesota. It's going to be a very close race, and right now, Franken, there's no way he's going to win that seat.